Well, happy holidays, everybody, and welcome to our December 2023 communications industry briefing. We were looking here at the end of the year. Happy Q4 for those who celebrate. And I don't know about you guys. I had to make this background for this webinar because I feel like I have to be Ted Lasso on the daily. I want to be curious. I want to stay positive because this industry is getting um, Alan, what word am I searching for? I want to say interesting. That's not the word I want to say.
Well, as
It's
in the
challenging,
Chinese proverb, well, it's always challenging.
right?
It's like when revenues are your target, it's the Chinese threat or proverb, which is, may
Right.
you live in interesting times. And
That's right.
boy, do we.
That's right. That's right. What do they say? Like their symbol for is a crisis is like opportunity. I don't know. I'm sorry.
That's it. Yes, yeah. There is, because it's
I'm
all done by the pictographs.
exactly. I'm getting off track. But hey, you know what? Here we are close to the end of the year. We still have a little bit of time, but I knew
Yeah,
that the right person to go to was Mr. Alan Quayle. Alan, welcome in
thank you
again.
so much.
You've given
And
us
thank you for having me, Tim.
I appreciate it. From TED Hack, TED Summit, look him up. Alan's been in the industry a long time.
I was BT sponsored. So
Okay.
my induction into the telecoms ecosystem was even back in university.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
you could argue I started all the way back in the 80s.
Got it. Got it.
Hence all the
Well,
gray hair.
okay. I'm gonna say, well, technically, my introduction to technology was also in the 80s. So we're both,
Okay.
Gen Xers,
Yeah, but you're
living in
wearing
the.
better than me.
Hey, that's great. Down 10 pounds this year. And here's my kombucha, Alan. So you can't, oop, there you go.
Oh,
You can't teach an old dog new tricks. They take a
yeah,
sip.
yeah.
Well, anyway, hopefully everybody's prepared for a great holiday and some time off. But let's go ahead
Exactly.
and dive in here, Alan. So I know
Yep.
you've got 10 predictions for us, and then you have three tips for us at the end, which you've got to stay for the
Correct.
three tips because those are going to be
Mhm.
the takeaways. So with that, why don't we just go ahead, whatever you want to start with, and
Straight
we'll
in.
dive
Yep.
in.
So
All right, great.
we'll kick off with IoT. IoT's
Got
had
it.
a lot of hype. Yeah, it's finally becoming programmable in a dev-centric way. When you look at the enterprise, when you're managing the LAN or you're managing Wi-Fi, it's all managed through the same interface. It's easy. With IoT, it's always been this horrible silo. And what we're seeing now are companies that are bashing that down and making IoT just as easy to manage as the rest of your enterprise assets. So as you mentioned, I run TAD Summit. We have a whole host of great innovators there. Security is one of those. They're making IoT programmable. Keep an eye on them. So I'm not saying this will necessarily be 2024, but I think you should start looking at it through 2024 because by 2025, there's going to be some really interesting developments that enable you to just manage IoT like you manage your enterprise network.
Hmm. Got it.
All right, so that's number, well, we'll kick off there.
Right.
Next, in terms of trends, is the continued rise of no code.
Mhm.
And as an example, OpenAI, they have APIs, but guess what? Everybody just uses the text-based interface and uses prompts. That is a prime example of how no code is so pervasive now. And
Right.
really, what is a developer? Well, you could claim it was a coder, but now it's really anybody with a problem that they're motivated to solve themselves because the tools are there for all of us, not just coders. So we're going to see that rise, and it benefits the end users. It benefits the companies selling their platforms because it helps them get to cash faster.
You got it.
That's the second trend. Watch that rise. And of course, as I mentioned, OpenAI has
Mm.
been a great example of that.
Yes.
Now, from AI, really what impacts us most, because we're a communications industry, it's the large language models. They're getting interesting. And yes, they still hallucinate. Yes, you need careful implementation to make sure you remain in control. It's still early days. Okay. Again, ridiculous hype, but things are moving fast. Now at TAD Summit, so just go to tadsummit.com. Tim, you can put the link in there if you
Sure.
like, in the description. We had a whole host of thought leaders sharing their LLM experiences. They shared architectures, applications, learning so far, self-help guides. So don't assume that you have to use Google, Microsoft, AWS, etc., because they just want to steal all your data. And that's all they want to do is get your data into their learning models. And your data, your conversations, that's gold dust. And you need to remain in control of that, because otherwise they'll be basically giving all the insights that you've generated from your gold dust and sharing it with competitors. So
Yeah.
keep in control of your data.
Yeah, Alan, I've
Right.
been reading a lot about how people are making sort of small LLMs based on
Yes.
keeping it
Open
sort of
source.
like behind a security firewall or whatever, where
Yes.
the company data stays local, but you can still build a model. So, and smaller
Exactly.
ones. So it feels like that's where we're
Exactly.
going.
You
Yeah.
don't need to be wasting so many resources. Open
Right.
source, and Google did a great uh, post that says, in the limit, open source large language models are going to win.
Yeah.
So they know that there's a period of where they're trying to make hay while the sun shines, and part of all this, oh, AI, it's dangerous, it's going to kill us all, we need to regulate, is what's happening is people with deep pockets are trying to basically hoard the models to themselves and large companies so they can make money. But open source will win on this. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think next year too, Ellen, you're going to be hearing a lot more about Copilot, right? On the Microsoft side, it
Yes.
just launched into Office, and I'm reading
Yes.
some really fascinating things about that.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. And a lot of it, if you go onto TikTok or any of those, sort of hints to, and tools in using Microsoft, it's already there. It's just, they're looking at, oh, maybe he's wanting to do this, and they give it to you straight away. So it's
Right.
not, really fundamentally new, but I think with the co-pilots, that's very interesting.
Right.
Because they already have your data because you're using Microsoft 365, so they
Yep.
know all the stuff that you're doing.
That's right.
So from there, with LLMs, I already mentioned conversations are important. And a thing that we're starting to see happen is the automation of listening, or another way of referring to it is listening at scale. Now, for those models, the LLMs need food, and that's the content of your customer and employee conversations. But compliance of those conversations around personal identifiable information, industry regulations is key, because these models will spurt out the data that they were trained
Right.
on. It just misformed prompt or something, and it'll just spurt out somebody's name, address, and a whole host of other. So you've got to, on the training of the models, ensure that there's no personal identifiable information in them. Now,
Right.
the IETF, so the Internet Engineering Task Force, they've got a working group now, and they're standardizing what's called VCOMs. So think of this as a PDF for conversations. And what this enables is the standardization of robot food. So now across your call center or contact center, or so UCCaaS system, or over your CPaaS, you can basically store all the conversations, whether it be text-based or multimedia-based. So it's like this conference call is a great example where it's multimedia. You can store it in a standardized way, so you can then pump that into your large language models. And the key here is your conversations are gold dust. That's the essence of your business, because your customers are sharing competitive information, sharing what's working in your product, what's not working, what's working in your processes, what's not. And by running it on a Microsoft or a Google or a Meta, you're essentially giving all that insight away to those organizations. And this is one of the reasons why SMS remains so important, because across SMS, those conversations are private between you and your customer. Well, up until Google starts basically running all messaging for the carriers. But SMS remains important in terms of maintaining privacy of your gold dust, which is the conversations.
Right. And I will say this too, Alan. This is the first year where we're holding meetings even at Commio internally, and we turn on, the listener
Yes.
software, and
Yeah.
it spits back notes as well as, to-dos for our team. We just started to
Yes.
do that. It's
Yep.
it's it's kind of scary. Like the hair on the back of my neck just stood up a little bit, but it works. It works
Yes.
great. And there'll
Yes.
be more to come. And you also mentioned, by the way, contact centers, right? Like they're already
Yes.
using the very similar things internally. Our
Yeah.
customer success people do as well, to,
Yeah.
to monitor those things. So, and this has just been in the last 2 or 3 months. So more to
Yes.
come. This
Oh
is
yeah.
great.
This is shift. This really is a shift in the industry.
Yeah.
Another shift that's been going on for a long time, but I would say last year and definitely into this year, we're going to see is a move towards IP messaging.
Right.
And it's for a variety of reasons. Because popularity. I mean, SMS isn't that popular in a lot of countries. I know our
Right.
focus should be in North America, but in the Middle East, people tend to use WhatsApp. If you're in China, you're using WeChat. If you're in Japan, you're using Line. But also, as I've discussed, and I'll come at the end, the messaging monopolies have made
Mm.
A2P SMS a real pain,
Yeah.
and the pricing has increased.
Yep.
And you need, I mean, you need a CSP partner that can help you manage this, transfer. Well, it is a transformation because the pricing's jumped up, the processes have jumped up, and it's tough.
Yeah.
It's not as easy. I mean, I remember I was talking to a friend. He was one of the founders of Troppo, and he was creating an app for a party he was running with one of the co-founders of Troppo. And he was like, I used to just be able to spin up an SMS number and get going. And it was going to take weeks to get
Yep.
it set up. His reaction to that, because he'd been out of the industry for a little bit of time, was, we've just killed innovation
Yeah.
on programmable comms. He was just shocked it's become so difficult. So that really, for me, was, when you talk to somebody who's been out of the industry for a while and then comes back in, it's like boiling frog. We sort of notice the changes and they're a pain, but when somebody comes in and are utterly horrified at where we are, that really drives it home.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Then, well, 2FA, what can we say? Elon Musk has had his rants, and what we've seen are passkeys. These are tokens that replace passwords, because it doesn't matter, any business, you've got those people that just can't remember or just hate passwords. And with passkeys, you've got a token. It could be your fingerprint reader on your phone or your laptop. And we're seeing mass move for enterprises. It's not just high tech, like Google saying, hey, add passkeys. It's really convenient, which I do. It's excellent. It makes my life so much easier and more secure. But I was in France, and one of the large system integrators there was, in a matter of 2 months, was migrating all the laptops over to support passkeys and either face recognition or fingerprint recognition. So again, this is something that will impact the traditional SMS 2FA business.
Got it.
Then we have a new acronym. Wall Street has decided, and of course, Wall Street's thinking in this space is very much led by Twilio. 80% of campaigns. So it's CPaaSAI. It's just CPaaS and artificial intelligence, and it's really large language models, which we've already mentioned. But you're going to see in the analyst reports this acronym, CPaaSAI, pop up more and more. So I just mentioned we have a new acronym, but it doesn't matter what people claim they are. Always look under the hood. One CPaaS can claim, to be the world-leading CPaaS, yet the 95% plus revenue is SMS aggregation. Well, the other CPaaS could be Commio. So you've got to look under the hood and understand what is their real business, and talk to their customers to see what their customers say. You can't just take the acronym, at all. All right. Oh, have you dropped?
No, should be good.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We
I
got
just
you.
couldn't hear.
Oh, okay.
I'm back. So that's CPaaSAI. That's the new acronym, and you'll see that come out later.
Actually, Alan, hold on. Let's pause here for a second. Can you describe to me, how is CPaaSAI different than CPaaS? What are we bolting on top of,
LLMs. That's it.
Okay.
CPaaS and LLMs. That's it.
So basically they're combined together, so they're doing some of the things we talked about, like they're listening to
Twilio.
conversations.
Twilio defines the thinking. Twilio now says it's an AI company. You have Jeff, stood there, talking about AI with the head of OpenAI, and that's the only shift. And it makes sense because all the conversations are taking place, whether it's text or voice or video, over a CPaaS. So now you're just putting the automated listening in, or listening at scale. It's all that stuff. And Wall Street have defined, all CPaaSAI. So that's your new label. All right. It'll be current in fashion, and Wall Street will give you extra valuation.
Sounds good.
Then moving on, we have camera. Right. There's a club for all the mobile operators called the GSMA. And they've defined a long list of APIs under this project called Camera or Camara, depending on what part of the UK you were brought up in. Now, you're going to hear a lot more about this, even here in North America. Examples of what the APIs expose are device location, device status, SIM swap status, one-time passwords, know your customer, carrier billing, 5G quality of service. A lot of these you can already get from your aggregator. So it's not that much new. I mean, device location, it's free on the device. But anyway, they've defined this long list of APIs. All I'll say is the GSMA had to go at this 10 years ago with a standard called One API. It failed, and Camera seems to be copying this. So when you see this acronym, just ignore it. It's not going to impact your business. Moving on.
Just use Commio's APIs and you'll be fine. Moving on.
That's it. You don't need standardized APIs. You just need something that works and it is easy to use. That's it. Okay.
Got it.
Now, the penultimate one in terms of trends, it's RCS. So RCS Rich Communication Suite, and of course, focus here is very much around RCS business messaging, which is generally Android focused because Google Messages is essentially, has RCS hidden under the hood. Now, Apple, because of EU regulatory issues, to dodge basically having to do a whole host of things it didn't want to do, said, oh, we'll support RCS, but peer-to-peer, not A2P. And we'll support it on our operating system, not in iMessages. So, of course, all the RCS business messaging guys are going, it's everywhere. It's not. So, your current plans for RCS messaging to Android phones doesn't change and will not need to change through 2024, no matter what you're being told. Also, the important thing to mention is what's really happening is there's some four-dimensional chess being played between Google and Apple. Because Google in Messages, it's not exactly RCS peer-to-peer. They've got a lot of additional value, and the RCS standards are appalling. I've written about it, must be 6 or 7 years ago, about how appalling the standards are and how difficult it is to implement. And I can bet you what Apple will do is it'll implement to the letter, and it will be a solid standards compliant implementation. And when it doesn't interoperate with Google, they'll just point the finger over and go, well, it's Google doing its specials. So we're going to see this slowly emerge, but for a business messaging perspective, you can ignore it. So I'm just making everybody's life easier on stuff to ignore.
So on a personal level, so my brother's the only one with an Android device. Is this going to continue to blow up our group texts, or are we gonna fix this?
I mean, let's think. Well, my son has an Android, and we use RCS. But that's the only person I use RCS with. Because most people haven't, either don't necessarily use the Google Messages, you had to go through a sign up to enable chat features. So there's a whole host of things, even if you had an Android, that sort of, it limited it. And anyway, if you've got a group chat between Androids and iPhones, it's just MMS. It just defaults to MMS. I mean, in North America, MMS sales are like MSC, so these serving center sales are, they're selling like hotcakes because everybody is doing group texting. It's one of the few countries that doesn't do it over WhatsApp. They do it over SMS. But the US is quite a unique market, shall we say.
Yes.
So I'd say this, they're going to enable it. It'll most probably make group texts a little nicer because it'll be using some of the RCS features. So I'll see, for example, when you're writing, I'll get that notification on my client potentially. So and it'll work both ways between Apple and Android. But as I say, there's four-dimensional chess being played. It has to get implemented. It's only in the iOS operating system. It's not on iMessage. So how it actually appears, well, your guess is as good as mine. And all it was done was because of EU regulations.
Right. Thanks, EU.
No
Appreciate it.
worries.
Yeah.
Then we have the last one,
Yes.
messaging monopoly. So this is something that I've been banging the drum either way. And they are stifling innovation and the use of A2P SMS. So I've got, I've done the messaging monopolies post. I did a simplified one because a lot of people outside the US, because the US again is a very special market and there's a lot of different players and people, didn't really understand exactly when I did the first post. So I simplified it so from the international audience and for those that aren't embedded in the messaging business could get
Right.
a better handle on what was going on with all these different companies. But the way to think of it is the carriers are like the Greek gods sat on Mount Olympus, demanding worship and providing the old boys network, so these are the messaging monopolies, with private visions of what they require. TCR, the campaign registry, which is now owned by Tata Communications, received one of those visions and has created a process straight out of George Orwell's 1984, where you have to share every thought about your campaign with Big Brother, the TCR. It's ridiculous the amount of information, examples, and some of it, anyway, I'm going to avoid going on the rant. I've written about it in the past. They
Yeah.
could have just said identity, we're just and knowledge of the fact that most of the businesses out there are sending texts and have been for years.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Alan's a good guy. He has great A2P stats over
Yeah.
the years. Of course he can send. That should have been it. But
Right.
no, it's just anyway. And of course, the pricing has jumped up enormously. It's now half a cent. That impacts a lot of use cases.
Yeah.
I remember the good old days when it was almost the same as a person-to-person text.
Yep.
And what this means is you need a partner like Commio to navigate all these monopolies and optimize, the much more significant costs being imposed on
Yes.
all the brands,
Yep.
because that's tough. And you need to work with your CSP to work out, okay, so what are we going to do here?
Right.
And
Yeah.
go for
No,
it, go for it.
you got it, Alan. I was going to say, like, it now takes longer to get a campaign up and running than it ever
Yes,
has. And they keep
yes.
promising it's going to get better, but it's actually getting worse.
You're
And
right.
yeah. So you got to plan ahead. You got to add more to your budget. You have to factor in incredible headaches with the registrations. You have to be prepared for rejections. You need to
Yes,
have your laundry list of reasons why what you're doing is fine, even though it may be negated.
yes.
It's never been harder to do messaging than
Exactly.
it is
And
today. It should be the reverse.
it should,
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be. That's what's
correct.
so frustrating,
Yeah,
and it's all done in the name of stopping spam, and it's not stopping spam at all.
yeah,
Our elderly parents, our children are being spammed all the time. It's not working. And I think, it's so we did on the TED Summit podcast, a sort of we need to draw a line in the sand. The monopolies and the carriers are making billions of spamming our elderly parents, our children, and have vastly inflated A2P messaging and all the problems in getting campaigns up and running, and is also having a significant impact on the UCCaaS industry as well. We have to say, look, you're killing the golden goose. Okay, it
yeah,
has to stop, and it can. There are so many other solutions we could be using.
yeah,
I mean, the FCC would, said, well, maybe we need to regulate this, and the industry said, oh, no, 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 we can solve it. We have the TCR, and we'll do all this. And of course, here we are.
right.
Ridiculous pricing, ridiculous processes, and I'm sorry to say, I'm not the bearer of good news here. It's going to get more complex.
Uh-huh.
We
Yeah,
have 800 SMS. Now that's got Twilio's vetting process, but
correct.
there's rumors that they're going to bring in another vetting company because the gods don't like Twilio. Twilio did,
Yeah,
basically did some legal stuff that enabled this whole industry,
right.
but the carriers still hold a grudge. FCC is closing the lead gen business. We've got 6 months to comply. That shocked me, but that's something we got to deal with as well. We've
Yeah,
got election interference has been
right.
exposed. We wrote about that a few months
Yep,
ago.
yep,
It's now been covered by the right-wing media and the left-wing media. Well,
right.
whatever wing media. It's been
Yes,
covered by both sides of the spectrum, and they're concerned. They don't trust and particularly point the finger at Aegis Mobile. They're saying you've got a vetting agency here that's biased. So, and both sides are pointing the finger. It shows
Right.
there's a whole lack of trust, and it's an election year for 2024. We're going to see the political, temperature jump up because of that, and that's going to affect all of A2P SMS, regardless of whether it's political messaging or not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
FCC and the Old Boys Network, they're having their Christmas parties. I include the CTIA and the messaging monopolies in the Old Boys Network.
Right.
They're having their parties, and they're going to look on, and they're going to see brands are angry. They're
Yep.
going to see the whole of the UCCaaS industry, the cloud communications industry, are angry, are demanding something be done about this, and we're starting to see politicians, attorney generals, using it as part of how they're defining their election campaign.
Correct.
With all the grandparents and children getting spammed and robocalled. So
Yeah.
we're likely to see some knee-jerk reactions, which unfortunately is going to impact all of us. So your CSP partner is critical in helping you manage what is going to be a noisy year, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Alan, I think you hit the nail on the head, is that the word that they should have been using, and it should have been their mantra on the messaging side, is identity. I feel like they did it on the stir shaken side to a point. Now, we all know the PSTNs and the physical hardware networks aren't covered by stir shaken. There's a massive hole you can drive 25 Mack trucks through and get around that system. At least they sort of nailed the, which throat to choke mantra of, hey, so this call started here, it jumped, this is this is the carrier, provider, originator. There's the three throats that we have to go after to choke if somebody's sending robocalls. Okay, great.
Exactly.
Why didn't we do that on the messaging side? Like, instead, we seem to care.
And that's what the FCC suggested to begin with. And that's why we ended up here. And also, we could have learned from stir shaken, because it can't be done in this network-centric way. It has to be done as an ecosystem way, because you've got so many brands that are just, why am I getting marked as flagged? Why is this? And then you've got all these agencies popping up that are acting as trolls, charging people ridiculous amounts for stuff that PSTN just needs to work, and we need to put in place the systems that just enable the PSTN to work. Full stop.
Yeah, the telecom mafia, right? Like, oh, it's a shame, if anything, what happened to those cool phone numbers you've been using for 20 years?
I know.
Right.
It's like they have no memory. It's like, oh, yes, you've been using that number for, like 25, 26 years. Of course, no problem. We have the record. No, we have no record. Who are you? Could you have your employee identify a name, your sort of child's first blood type? It just goes on and on and on.
Alan, there's got to be, hopefully our young people will figure this out, because it seems like we can't. Our generation can't.
We can, because again, what we've decided at TED Summit is somebody has to talk the truth. And that's why we have the Truth in Telecoms. And we're banging the drum. We're calling out names. We're pointing to where there are inadequacies. We're, like when Bill Peters did his complaint, we got it posted. We showed the fact that there was embargo traffic being delivered. We showed that there was election interference. So we're out there trying to help, the ecosystem, not just the telcos and their old boy network, the whole ecosystem, get this solved, because getting an SMS notification is nice. It's easy. It just works. Could we just get back to where it's a reasonable cost, and we can just, have processes working for the benefit of everyone in America? But anyway,
Alan, I'll leave you with one thought, which is, excuse me, I'll edit that out. Sorry.
No, you had the flu. Well, you're recovering from the flu, so fully understand.
I feel like, Alan, at a certain point in the future, there's going to come a time where you got to sign up as a new business, for your taxes, your state filings, whatever. Oh, and your communication waiver. I don't know, whatever you call it. This is who I am. I'm going to use, right? And oh, this is my magic ticket that I can use to get my voice, a token for my identity, and on the messaging side, and video, and whatever. And it's there's a central. Here's the document. It's a central thing, and this is me, and it follows me through all my comms. Like, surely somebody can figure this out.
And we've got a TED Summit podcast coming up where we're going to give several people grillings around the solutions that they've got. So
Good.
there are solutions. We can be in a far better place. Should not have been in the situation we're in, but it is what it is.
Hey, by
So,
the way, and I want to just say this. Well, two things. I want to say, FCC, good job starting on stir shake, and there's still ways to go.
a lot to it,
TCR, please, can that
yeah.
okay, let's just figure out how to fix that thing. And
Yes,
last but not least, it's like, carriers at the end of the day, you have to stop not taking responsibility for your networks. Like you
oh
want to
yeah,
just own the coppers, right? Great, good for you, but you can play a much better, more centralized role if you can get your
correct.
stuff together. Just and
You got it.
yeah,
Absolutely have to take responsibility.
yeah,
So I
right.
have three top tips,
Yes,
and
perfect.
they are: ignore the noise. So RCS camera, ignore it. If you've got an RCS plan in focused on Android, just just continue as normal. Okay, just
Yeah,
ignore all the hype and BS.
yeah,
Your CSP partner is critical for navigation because, boy, we are in through a noisy, rough ride through
yeah,
2024. It's an election year. The political
right.
temperature is going to be very hot. We are not seeing anything move in the messaging monopolies. They think everything's fine. And that's basically a house of cards that's going to fall in on itself. And
Yeah,
as you said, there are other options based around identity that can solve this and solve this relatively quickly. So there are
yeah,
solutions out there. We can stop basically our elderly parents and our children being spammed all the time.
you got it.
And finally, you can build large language models for your business today.
Mhm.
Go to TED Summit, see the people that were building really cool stuff that keeps you in control of your data and provides you some guidance. It isn't, I wouldn't say go big, but you should be exploring it in understanding all your customer and your employee conversations. Because what's really interesting is when you start doing that and you look at the difference in terms of what's important from an employee versus a customer perspective, you get a real interesting feel for how customer aligned are we. So there's some interesting stuff you can play with through 2024, and I think by 2025 this will need to be in your business plan.
Yep.
So I'd say 2024, stop, sort of prepping. And if your CSP partner is doing something interesting in this space, chat to them, because they're most probably an early adopter. So it gives you a chance to learn together on how you can add it to the services that they're already providing you. And it's not that difficult because, as I said, the rise of no code means there's a lot you can do without requiring a big development project around it.
That's right. That's right. And Ellen, I will say this, one of the interesting things is we talk about these LLMs for your business. We have so many customer calls where there's such great insights delivered by our customers through their request to us. And we're
Yes.
able to, we use our tools to record those calls. We can generate product ideas and keep our product team up to date on what's out there. What are we missing?
Yes.
What should we be developing? And as long as you got a
Exactly.
product team who's watching and paying attention and aggregating and innovating, you can
Yes.
easily leapfrog anybody in this industry by paying attention. And I mean,
To
that's
your
how
customer.
that's how Think/Commio started. You know,
Exactly.
it was,
Exactly. That's right. You're
how
spot
can we
on there.
make it easier? Yeah, I
And
gotcha.
also, your best competitive intelligence is your customers because they're
Right.
going to tell you where you're behind, where you're in front, what they like, and they don't care. They're making a purchase decision, so they'll say stuff that's brutally honest, but that's
Right.
exactly what you want to hear because they say, well, if I would go with this competitor, but for twice the price, and I'm not prepared to pay that, and that gives you now some very interesting elasticity because then
Right.
you can start. Well, okay, if we did, then could we sort of improve margin on this? So definitely the gold dust is all your customer, but also employee conversations.
Exactly. Well, Alan, thank you for that great summary. I think we both agree that 2024, in a lot of ways, this industry has become more complex, more convoluted, both as somebody who provides the service, but also I know our consumers of our products and services are feeling the strain.
Yes,
So that's why our team here at Commio is here to work with you to help explain what's going on in the industry and help you navigate the time and the resources and the focus you need to have to be successful with
that's
voice
it.
and messaging this year.
That's it.
And we're happy to help.
Cool.
But that's really important. You already nailed it during your presentation, so we'd be happy to have those conversations. But Alan, I wish you all the best in the new year. Thank you for all your help
Absolutely.
this year. Keep say hi to Johnny for me.
I
Keep
will do.
going. Keep
Absolutely.
going. We'll be watching you on LinkedIn. If you're, by the way,
Uh,
guys, if you're not following Alan Quayle on LinkedIn, you should be because you will be not only entertained but informed because Alan is very up to date. So,
Thank you so
Alan,
much.
thank you very much. And like
You're
I said,
welcome.
have a great holiday. Thanks to everybody, and see you in the new
See
year.
you
We
in
got
the new
lots of
year.
great content coming for sure.
Bye bye.
Thanks, guys.